The barn door creaked. Ellis Cade froze mid-step. His boots, thick with dust, stopped inches from the porch. The morning light hadn't yet broken clean across the sky, but the ranch was already humming with silence. Too quiet. He reached for the rifle that leaned against the doorframe. Not for shooting, just habit. He'd had 2 goats stolen the month before. No prints. No trail. The sheriff had blamed wolves. Ellis didn't buy it. He stepped off the porch. The barn sat just 50 yards out, shadowed against the pale morning. The door moved again. Slow, like someone was trying not to be heard. Ellis narrowed his eyes and started forward. The boards beneath his feet whispered. Dust rose with every step, and a low wind moved through the trees like a warning. As he reached the barn, he pressed his palm flat against the wood, listening. Movement. He jerked the door wide. 3 shapes scrambled like frightened animals. A burlap sack tumbled to the ground. Carrots and apples spilled out across the straw. In the dim light, Ellis saw a boy, no more than 9, freeze like a cornered rabbit, his hands still gripping the sack's drawstring. Behind him, a girl, taller and thinner, yanked a smaller child behind her. The littlest one didn't move, just stared at him with wide, tired eyes. "What in the?" Ellis barked. "You kids robbing me?" "No," the girl cried. Her voice cracked. We sorry. We were just hungry." Ellis stepped inside, rifle at his side. "You're stealing. That's what you're doing." The little boy's lip trembled. "We didn't break nothing. We just took some carrots. And a few." "Tommy, stop talking," the girl snapped, turning to him. Then, to Ellis, "Please, don't call nobody. We'll put it back." Ellis stared. The girl couldn't have been older than 12. Her red dress hung off her like it used to fit someone stronger. Her knees were scraped. Her eyes were dark-ringed with exhaustion. The younger kids looked no better. Ragged, underfed, all 3 of them barefoot. "You don't even got shoes," Ellis muttered. The girl swallowed hard. "We'll leave. We didn't mean harm." "Too late for that." Ellis stepped closer. "You don't steal from a man's barn and walk away." The smallest child began to cry, quietly, as if trying not to. The girl bent down and pulled her close. Ellis looked at the burlap sack again, then at the girl. "What's your name?" "Clara," she said. He nodded toward the boy. "Him?" "Tommy," she answered. "He's 9. And that's Lily. She's 6. Ellis didn't move. "Where's your folks?" Clara hesitated. "Gone." "What do you mean gone?" "I mean dead, sir." The words hit like a slap. She straightened, her back stiff but her chin trembling. "Our mama passed 6 months ago. Our daddy a year before that. We were staying with a neighbor lady who said she'd keep us, but after a while, she started locking the food up. Said we were too many mouths. So we left." "You just walked out." "We ran," Clara said. "We didn't steal from her. We just left. Been walking 3 days. We saw your barn. We just needed food, so that's all. We'll go now. We'll give back what we took." Ellis felt the weight of the rifle in his hands. It felt stupid now, too heavy, too loud for children this broken. The door creaked behind him. "Ellis," a soft voice said. "Miriam." He turned. She stood in the sunlight, robe wrapped tight, her hair braided back. She looked past him and saw the children. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, Lord." "They were stealing from the barn," Ellis said, still watching Clara. "Said they are orphans." Miriam stepped forward. Slow. She looked at the sack, the spilled food, then at Clara. "My name's Miriam," she said gently. "How long since you 3 had a full meal?" Clara didn't answer. Her eyes dropped. Miriam's voice broke. "God above. They are just bones." Ellis scratched his jaw, uneasy. "I was gonna call the sheriff." "You were not," Miriam said, sharp now. You were gonna do what your conscience told you. And I know your conscience better than you do. Tommy shifted behind Clara. Are you gonna take us in or call the law? Clara gripped his shoulder. Tommy, quiet. Miriam looked at Ellis. We can't just send them off. He looked at the kids again. Clara was standing tall, like a soldier hiding a limp. Tommy's lip was bleeding where he'd bitten it. And Lily, too small, too tired, was barely keeping her eyes open. Ellis sighed and turned to Miriam. They stay for breakfast. That's it. Clara stiffened. We'll work for it. What? We ain't asking for handouts, she said. We'll clean. We'll feed the chickens. Just don't call the sheriff. Ellis met her eyes. There was no beg in her voice, only a quiet, practiced dignity that didn't match her age. He nodded once. You'll eat first. Then we talk. Clara blinked. Then slowly, she nodded back. Miriam stepped in and gently placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. Come on, children. Let's get you fed. As they walked toward the house, Ellis lingered at the barn. He looked at the half-empty sack, the carrots rolling in the dust. Sir, Clara said suddenly, turning back. Thank you. He didn't answer, but something in him shifted. Like a gate he didn't know was rusted finally gave way. The aroma of Miriam's cooking filled every corner of the small farmhouse kitchen, a warm, comforting blanket against the morning chill. Biscuits, golden and steaming, piled high on a platter beside sizzling bacon and a generous bowl of scrambled eggs. The usual morning quiet was replaced by the soft clinking of plates and Miriam's gentle murmurs as she guided the children to the table. Clara, still clutching Lily's hand, moved hesitantly, but Tommy, propelled by sheer hunger, headed straight for the food. Miriam placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Slow down there, young man. It's not going anywhere. Tommy looked up, his face a mix of embarrassment and overwhelming relief. Sorry, I ain't seen this much food in a long time. Miriam offered a sad, knowing smile. I can see that. Now, sit. All of you. She gestured to the 3 chairs, usually empty, now filled by small, gaunt figures. Ellis watched from the doorway, leaning against the frame, coffee in hand. He'd seen hunger before, but never so raw. Lily, especially, was heartbreakingly frail. She sat squeezed between Clara and Tommy, clutching a biscuit like it was the most precious thing she'd ever held, not eating it right away. Go on, little one, Miriam coaxed softly, pushing a small glass of milk toward Lily. It's warm. Lily slowly, tentatively, took a bite, her eyes, wide and weary, dimming further with the effort. Clara reached over, gently rubbing Lily's back. Tommy, meanwhile, ate with ferocious intensity, shoveling eggs, then bacon, then another biscuit, with unashamed gusto. A small, grudging smile touched Ellis's lips. The boy certainly had an appetite. So, Clara, Miriam began softly, where were you headed? Do you have any family? Any place you were trying to reach? Clara chewed slowly, swallowed, then met Miriam's eyes. No. Not really. Mama said we had an aunt in California, but she never talked about her much. We were just walking, trying to find somewhere quiet. Somewhere we could maybe pick some berries or find some work. Her gaze flickered to Ellis. We don't mind hard work, sir. We really don't. Ellis grunted, pushing off the doorframe and stepping into the kitchen. He poured himself a cup of coffee. Work don't put food on the table every day when you're just picking berries. Go. This land out here, it'll chew you up and spit you out if you ain't got a roof over your head and a solid meal in your belly. Clara flinched but didn't back down. We know that, sir. We learned it hard, but we'll do whatever you need. We can help with the chickens. Tommy's good with animals. He can help with the horses. Maybe. She looked at Tommy, who nodded eagerly, his mouth full. And I can clean. And Lily, She can help with light things. She's quiet. Miriam stepped in, placing a reassuring hand on Clara's arm. You all just focus on eating right now. We can talk about work later. There's plenty to do around here, no doubt. She shot Ellis a look that clearly told him to soften his approach. He took a long sip of coffee. He wasn't sure how to feel. His ranch was small, barely enough to get by. Another 3 mouths, a considerable burden. But then he looked at Lily, who had finished her first biscuit and was now eyeing the next, a tiny spark of hope in her eyes. And Tommy, who seemed to find temporary haven in the abundance. And Clara, carrying the world's weight, still holding herself with fierce dignity. You said your mama passed 6 months ago, Ellis said, his voice less harsh. What was her name? Sarah, Clara replied. Sarah Miller. And your daddy? John Miller. He was a carpenter. Ellis nodded slowly. Miller wasn't a name he recognized. So you've just been on the road since your neighbor turned you out? Clara's gaze dropped to her plate. Pretty much. We tried to stay, but it was always the same. People got tired of us. Said we ate too much. Her voice was barely a whisper. Said we were a burden. Silence settled, broken only by cutlery and Lily's soft chewing. Miriam reached across the table, squeezing Clara's hand gently. You're not a burden here, child. Not right now. Ellis stared at his coffee cup. Miriam was right, of course. She always was when it came to matters of the heart. Maybe, just maybe, these children weren't a burden. Maybe they were just in need. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, he and Miriam were the ones who could actually help. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the yard. The children, their bellies finally full, sat on the porch steps, watching swallows darting in and out of the barn eaves. Lily had even managed a small, tired smile when Tommy pointed out a bluebird. Inside, Ellis and Miriam stood in their living room, their discussion a quiet hum. Ellis, we can't send them away, Miriam said, firm but soft. Not now. You saw them. They are skin and bone. The sheriff, he'll just put them in an orphanage, and who knows what kind of life that would be. Ellis ran a hand through his hair. I know, Miriam. I know. But 3 of them, we barely manage. Food, clothes, winter's coming. And what about school? We'll figure it out, she insisted. 1 step at a time. For now, they need a safe place, a warm bed, consistent meals. She walked to the window, looking out at the children. Clara's bright. Tommy's got spirit. Lily, she just needs nurturing. Miriam turned back, her eyes shining with quiet determination. We have enough space. The old bunkhouse, it's been empty for years. We could clean it up, make it livable. The bunkhouse, a dusty, neglected structure near the main barn, used for storage. Ellis had considered tearing it down, but now, picturing it, he saw a small, rough-hewn dwelling where 3 children might find stability. It'd be a lot of work, he conceded, his resistance weakening. And they'd need clothes, shoes. We have some of your old things, from when you were a boy, Miriam said, a hint of a smile. And I can mend. We'll make do. We always do. She walked over and took his hands, her gaze steady. Ellis, this isn't just about them. It's about us too. About what kind of people we are. He looked down at their joined hands. Miriam was right. He was a practical man. But Miriam kept his moral compass true. All right, he sighed. All right, they can stay. For a while, anyway. We'll see how it goes. Miriam's face lit up, a radiant glow. She squeezed his hands. Thank you, Ellis. You won't regret it. He wasn't so sure, but he didn't voice his doubts. Instead, he walked to the door and opened it, stepping onto the porch. The children looked up, their faces a mixture of fear and faint hope. All right, you 3, Ellis said, his voice gruff but with a new, softer undertone. "Miriam and we've talked. You can stay here. We've got an old bunkhouse we can fix up for you. But there are rules. You'll earn your keep. No more taking things without asking. And you'll help with chores, understand?" Clara pushed herself up, pulling Lily with her. Tommy scrambled up beside them. Clara's eyes, still weary, now held a glimmer of something profound, relief and fierce gratitude. "Yes, sir," Clara said, clear and strong. "We understand. And we'll work hard. We promise." Tommy, not to be outdone, added, "I can milk cows, sir, and feed the chickens. I'm real strong." He puffed out his small chest. Ellis chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. Miriam smiled, leaning against the doorframe. "We'll see about that, young man," Ellis said, genuine warmth seeping into his tone. "First, we eat. Then we work." He turned to Miriam. "Miriam, start gathering some blankets. I'll go get some tools. That bunkhouse is going to need a good cleaning and some repairs." As Ellis walked towards the shed, he heard Clara's soft voice behind him, speaking to her siblings. "We have a home. Lily. Tommy, we have a home." The words, quiet and filled with fragile wonder, followed him, and for the first time in a long time, Ellis Cade felt a different kind of weight settle in his chest. Not the burden of unwanted visitors, but the quiet, unfamiliar weight of a new responsibility, and perhaps a new kind of purpose. He hoped he was up to the task. The following morning brought with it a crisp bite, promising the approach of autumn. Ellis, true to his word, was up before dawn, heading straight for the bunkhouse with his tools. He found Clara already there, sweeping again, determined to make the place spotless. Tommy soon joined them, dragging a small pile of kindling he'd found by the creek. Even Lily, holding Miriam's hand, ventured inside, her eyes wide as Ellis began tackling the potbelly stove. "All right, boy, hold this end," Ellis instructed Tommy, who eagerly gripped a length of rusted stovepipe. The work was slow, requiring patience and a bit of ingenuity to patch holes and secure the sections. Ellis's gruff instructions were punctuated by Tommy's eager questions about how the smoke would go up the chimney and how hot the stove would get. Clara, meanwhile, methodically wiped down every surface, her small frame surprisingly strong as she scrubbed away years of grime. Miriam directed Lily in sorting out some old, moth-eaten blankets she'd found, teaching her how to fold them neatly. By midday, a faint wisp of smoke curled from the bunkhouse chimney. Inside, a tentative warmth began to spread from the belly of the old stove. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The air, once heavy with dust and damp, now carried the faint, comforting scent of wood smoke. "There," Ellis said, wiping his hands on his worn trousers. "It'll do for now. Keep that fire low and steady." He looked at the children, their faces smudged but alight with a quiet triumph. "You three earned your keep today." Clara looked around the small, transformed space. The cots now boasted clean, if faded, blankets. The single shelf held the oil lamp. It was sparse, but it was theirs. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "It's warm." That evening, a different kind of quiet settled over the ranch. The children, fed and tired from their efforts, were tucked into their new beds in the bunkhouse. Lily, for the first time, fell asleep without clinging to Clara, a small, independent sigh escaping her lips. Tommy mumbled about horses in his sleep. Inside the main house, Ellis and Miriam sat at the kitchen table, a single lamp illuminating their faces. "They are good children, Ellis," Miriam said, stirring her tea. "Hard workers. And Clara, she's got a backbone you rarely see in someone so young." Ellis grunted, but it was an acknowledgement, not a dismissal. He was thinking of Tommy's eagerness, of Lily's small, trusting hand in Miriam's. He had always been a man of routine, of predictable days and solitary work. Now, the ranch felt fuller, louder, and, he grudgingly admitted, a little less empty. Still a long way to go, Ellis murmured, staring into his coffee cup. Clothes, proper shoes, school. Winter's going to be here before we know it. The practicalities weighed on him. It wasn't just about feeding them now. It was about providing for them. Truly. Miriam reached across the table, placing her hand over his. We'll get there, Ellis. One day at a time. We always do. She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. And tomorrow, I think we start with some fresh clothes. And maybe a bath for those three. A proper one. Ellis managed a slight grin. A bath, he thought. That was a start. A small, domestic step on a long, uncertain road. But as he looked at Miriam, then out the window towards the bunkhouse, a feeling, unfamiliar yet warm, began to bloom in his chest. A feeling that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected burden was something else entirely. The days that followed settled into a rhythm, an unexpected harmony on the Cade Ranch. The initial awkwardness between Ellis and the children slowly gave way to something akin to routine, if not yet outright comfort. Miriam, as always, was the quiet conductor of this new orchestra. She had, as promised, initiated the proper bath for the children, a monumental task performed in the washbasin with warm, lye-scented water. The children, initially hesitant, eventually succumbed to the cleansing, emerging with slightly pinker skin and an unfamiliar scent of soap. New clothes were a challenge. Miriam, resourceful as ever, unearthed several of Ellis's old shirts from his youth, patching them meticulously to fit Tommy. For Clara, she dug out some of her own worn-out dresses, skillfully altering them. Lily received the softest, most patched-up dress that Miriam could fashion from an old tablecloth. The children still looked a bit like scarecrows in ill-fitting clothes, but they were clean, and for the first time, not shivering in the morning air. Chores became their currency. Clara, with a diligence that impressed even Ellis, took to helping Miriam with the house, sweeping floors, washing dishes, and learning to bake bread. Her movements were precise, her questions thoughtful. She absorbed every instruction, her desire to prove useful palpable. Tommy, true to his word, proved to be a natural with animals. He spent hours in the barn, helping Ellis feed the horses and cows, his small hands surprisingly gentle. He even managed to befriend the grumpy old ranch dog, Rusty, who previously only tolerated Ellis. Lily, still the quietest, found her niche helping Miriam in the small vegetable garden, her tiny fingers adept at picking ripe berries and pulling weeds. She hummed softly to herself as she worked, a sound that brought an unexpected lightness to Miriam's heart. Ellis watched them, sometimes from a distance, sometimes up close. He saw the way Clara's brow furrowed in concentration, the quiet determination in her eyes. He saw Tommy's boundless energy, the way he would chatter to the horses as if they understood every word. And he saw Lily, slowly, tentatively, beginning to unfurl, like a shy wildflower reaching for the sun. The ranch, which had once felt like a solitary kingdom, now buzzed with small, purposeful lives. One afternoon, as Ellis was mending a fence near the far pasture, Tommy appeared beside him, carrying a bucket of water for the horses. "Sir," Tommy began, hesitant. "Why don't you have other ranch hands?" Ellis paused, straightening up. "Used to. Hard times hit. Couldn't afford 'em. Been just me and Miriam for a while now." Tommy nodded, contemplating this. "It's a lot of work for two people." "It is," Ellis admitted, picking up his hammer. "We're helping now," Tommy stated proudly. "Clara says we're earning our keep. She says we're not a burden." The words struck Ellis, echoing Clara's whispered fears from that first morning. He looked down at the boy, who was watching him with earnest, innocent eyes. "No," Ellis said, his voice rougher than he intended, but firm. "No, you're not a burden." Tommy beamed, a genuine, uncomplicated smile that seemed to light up the whole pasture. "Good. Because Lily really likes the chickens. And Clara says she likes the smell of the bread she bakes." Ellis felt a warmth spread through him, unexpected and unfamiliar. He cleared his throat. "Well, get that water to the horses, boy. They are thirsty." As Tommy scampered off, Ellis returned to his fence mending. The sun beat down, the familiar ache in his back a comforting reminder of honest work. But now, it wasn't just for himself and Miriam. There was a new reason, 3 small reasons, that drove his efforts. The thought brought with it not exhaustion, but a quiet, burgeoning sense of responsibility. Not a heavy weight, but a guiding force. He still worried about the looming winter, about school, about the future of these 3 children. But for the first time since they arrived, the worries were tempered by a faint, yet undeniable, flicker of hope. He realized he was no longer just a rancher working his land. He was a guardian, slowly, awkwardly, stepping into a role he never knew he was meant to play. The silence on the ranch was still there, but it was a different kind of silence now, one filled with the quiet hum of new life. Winter arrived with a vengeance, painting the Wyoming landscape in a stark, unforgiving white. The wind howled like a hungry wolf, rattling the windows of the farmhouse and the small, sturdy bunkhouse. Days were shorter, the work harder, but the ranch was no longer a solitary, quiet place. It was a haven, a home forged in shared effort and burgeoning affection. The pot-belly stove in the bunkhouse roared day and night, a beacon of warmth for Clara, Tommy, and Lily. Miriam had managed to knit rudimentary hats and mittens from old wool scraps, and Ellis, after much grumbling, had finally bought 3 pairs of sturdy, if oversized, boots from the general store in town. Seeing the children's faces light up at the sight of proper footwear had sent a strange, unfamiliar pang through his chest, a mix of satisfaction and something deeper, something akin to pride. School, as Ellis had worried, remained a distant dream. The nearest one was too far, and the roads often impassable in the snow. But Miriam, with her quiet determination, had become their teacher. Every afternoon, after chores were done, she'd gather them at the kitchen table. Clara, with her thirst for knowledge, absorbed everything, her small finger tracing words in an old, battered Bible. Tommy, while less inclined to sit still, showed a surprising aptitude for numbers, especially when Miriam framed them in terms of cattle or fence posts. Even Lily, initially withdrawn, would sit silently, sketching crude animals on a slate, listening to Miriam's soft voice as she read aloud. The children, in turn, had woven themselves into the very fabric of Ellis and Miriam's lives. The house was livelier, filled with the murmur of voices, the occasional burst of laughter from Tommy, and the quiet comfort of Lily's presence. Ellis found himself looking forward to dinner, not just for the food, but for the stories Tommy would recount of the barn, or Clara's observations about the changing seasons. He still barked orders, still frowned easily, but the edges of his gruff exterior had softened, imperceptibly at first, then undeniably. One biting cold evening, as a blizzard raged outside, they were all gathered in the main house. The wind rattled the panes, and the fire in the hearth crackled merrily. Miriam was darning socks, Clara reading silently, Tommy playing with a set of carved wooden horses Ellis had whittled for him. Lily, curled on Miriam's lap, was drawing in a small, treasured notebook Miriam had given her. Suddenly, a loud, insistent knocking rattled the front door, cutting through the storm's roar. Ellis froze, his hand instinctively going to the rifle above the fireplace. Visitors were rare in any season, impossible in a blizzard. He exchanged a wary glance with Miriam. He slowly approached the door, unbarring it cautiously. Standing on his porch, silhouetted against the swirling snow, was Sheriff Daly. His face was grim, his coat dusted with frost. Behind him stood 2 deputies, stamping their feet in the snow. Miriam gasped, rising from her chair, her hand flying to her mouth. The children, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, froze. Tommy's wooden horses clattered to the floor. Lily buried her face in Miriam's side. "Ellis," Daly said, his voice flat, devoid of warmth. "Got a tip. Been looking for a few weeks now. Heard you got some strays." His eyes, cold and assessing, swept past Ellis into the warm room, landing on the 3 pale faces. Clara, despite her fay, stepped forward, placing herself slightly in front of Tommy and Lily. "Sir, please," she began, her voice trembling but clear. "We're not causing any trouble. We work here. We're not thieves." Sheriff Daly ignored her, his gaze fixed on Ellis. "They orphans, Ellis. Know that for a fact." Ellis felt a surge of protectiveness, hot and fierce, rise within him. He straightened his shoulders. "They are staying with us, Daly. They are helping out. No trouble, hey?" "Helping out ain't the same as proper guardianship," Daly countered, stepping a foot inside, bringing a gust of icy air. Local orphanage heard tell of 3 children wandering, matching their description. "Got to take them in, Ellis. It's the law. For their own good." Lily began to whimper, a tiny, heart-wrenching sound. Tommy's eyes were wide with terror, flickering from the sheriff to Ellis. Clara, though shaking, stood her ground. "They are not going anywhere," Miriam said, her voice surprisingly strong. She walked to stand beside Ellis, placing a hand on his arm, her gaze defiant as she met Daly's. "They are family now. We've taken them in." Daly raised an eyebrow, a hint of disdain in his eyes. "Family? Miriam, Ellis, you know how hard things are. You can barely keep this place afloat. Adding 3 more mouths, children no less. It's not sustainable. It's irresponsible. What we choose to sustain is our business, Sheriff," Ellis growled, stepping forward, his hand clenching into a fist. He looked at Daly, then back at the 3 terrified children. In that moment, the last vestiges of his old, solitary life fell away. These children, once a perceived burden, were now undeniably his. Their fear was his fear, their safety his paramount concern. "They are staying," Ellis declared, his voice resonating with an authority Daly had rarely heard from the quiet rancher. "They belong here, and if you try to take them, Sheriff, you'll have to go through me." His gaze was unyielding, a silent promise. Daly stared, a flicker of surprise in his cold eyes. He looked from Ellis's determined face to Miriam's unwavering gaze, then to the 3 children huddled together, watching them with bated breath. The tension in the room was thick, palpable. After a long moment, Sheriff Daly sighed, a cloud of frosty breath escaping his lips. He knew Ellis Cade, a man of his word, for good or ill. He also knew the futility of trying to take children from a home where they were clearly wanted, especially in such a blizzard. "All right, Ellis," Daly said, his voice clipped. "Consider this a formal warning. I'll be back in the spring. If I find these children aren't properly cared for, if they aren't healthy, or if they are not registered for schooling, then we'll have a different conversation. Understand?" Ellis nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Daly's. "Understood." Without another word, Daly turned and, with his deputies, disappeared back into the swirling snow. The door clicked shut, plunging the room into a ringing silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the children's ragged breaths. Miriam pulled Lily into a tight hug, tears welling in her eyes. Tommy rushed to Ellis, burying his face in his leg. Clara stood, trembling, but a faint, grateful smile touched her lips. Ellis looked at them, his new family. The fear had been real, the threat tangible. But facing it, standing united, had solidified something within him. He knelt, pulling Tommy into a rare, awkward embrace, then reached out and drew Clara and Lily closer too. "You're home," he said, his voice rough with emotion, but undeniably full. "All of you. You're home." And as the blizzard raged on outside, blanketing the ranch in its icy embrace, the warmth inside the small farmhouse glowed brighter than ever, a testament to an unexpected family, found and fiercely loved, in the heart of the Wild West.